Karoline's smirk wavers just for a moment before she regains control, switching topics to immigration with a smug pivot. Let's talk about African refugees, shall we? She chirps, masking aggression under polished vowels. Ibrahim sits still, a slight shift of his gaze, the only signal that he's registering every word, every tone, every dismissal. She speaks as though addressing a schoolboy, not a head of state, but he doesn't flinch. The camera catches it all. Across social media, reactions are swelling. On one screen, the video is clipped with subtitles in multiple languages. On another, users are speculating about the hot mic. Was it Karoline's producer muttering a racial slur? Off camera, Ibrahim doesn't acknowledge the building storm. His face is carved from the kind of silence only history understands. A distant voiceover enters the narrator, tracing his lineage through centuries of resistance. Back to the empires of Mali, through colonization, through fields where blood once soaked into copper-rich soil. In real time, the studio begins to fracture. The production team receives an influx of messages. Interns behind the camera exchange nervous glances, but Karoline powers through, quoting economic figures she barely understands, trying to corner Ibrahim into a soundbite trap. If your country is so powerful, why are your people still poor? She asks, sweetly, cruelly. Ibrahim's eyes risen with rage, but with ancestral weight. We're taken into his memory, his mother mending clothes under a single bulb, his village debating politics by firelight. The way elders in his childhood taught diplomacy with silence, not with speeches. When he finally responds, it's not an answer but a reckoning. Poverty is when a land rich in gold still begs for bread. Ask your banks where our wealth sleeps. The air stiffens. Karoline opens her mouth, but nothing comes. The feed cuts to commercial too suddenly. In the silence, producers scramble. Online hashtags are already trending. Hashtag #SitDownBoy. Hashtag Ibrahim speaks. Hashtag HotMic Studio. A small sound in the background of the original audio is now going viral. Someone whispering, "Get this savage off the set." Sleuths are enhancing the audio, arguing over who said it. Ibrahim, however, has already left the building, slipping into the back seat of a black sedan, his expression unreadable. His aide, a quiet woman named Awa, shows him the trending footage on her phone. He doesn't watch it. He looks out the window, remembering a different kind of microphone, the rusted speaker at a rural youth rally years ago, where he first spoke against colonialism with only chickens and farmers as his audience. As the car winds through Manhattan, a storm gathers, both literal and symbolic. Dark clouds cover the skyline. Elsewhere, a teenager in Nairobi translates Ibrahim's quote for his TikTok followers. In Johannesburg, schoolgirls reenact the moment with fists raised. In Paris, a retired French colonel watches the clip and mutters, "He reminds me of dangerous man." In Washington, Karoline's team begins damage control. They draft a half apology. They schedule her next guest, an economist who can correct Traoré's rhetoric. But something's shifted. The apology won't land the same, because now, voices long silenced are rising, and all eyes are on Ibrahim. He's scheduled to speak at Columbia University the next day, but the event's status is uncertain. Protesters have begun to gather, some supporting him, some accusing him of divisive politics. The camera lingers on Ibrahim that evening as he walks alone in Central Park, removing his jacket in the summer humidity. Flashback to a night in Ouagadougou where he once walked the same way before announcing a reform that ousted a corrupt French mining company. The same stillness in his body, the same depth in his eyes. And yet here, in this foreign land, something aches. He calls his mother. They speak in Dula. She tells him, "You shook the tree. Now let's see what fruit falls." Meanwhile, Karoline replays the moment in her dressing room, unsure if she regrets the insult or the backlash. She's rattled not because she thinks she was wrong, but because the silence that followed her words exposed her. Her mask cracked, and the world saw. Her assistant hands her a folder, background on Traoré's military service, his education in Ouagadougou, his grassroots projects. "Why didn't we use this?" she mutters. "Too humanizing." The assistant replies, "That was the point." Elsewhere in the city, journalists dig deeper. One discovers leaked internal emails from the talk shows, staff conversations laced with casual racism, jokes about African leaders. Another reporter finds old footage of Ibrahim as a university student debating a European diplomat, dismantling centuries of colonial justifications in under 3 minutes. The media cannot contain the fire now. Former diplomats speak on praising Ibrahim's poise, others condemning his anti-Western rhetoric, but no one can deny the elegance of his silence, nor the weight of his words. Back in Harlem, a small bookstore hangs a banner that reads, "Your empire is already dust." A poet begins composing verses in response to Ibrahim's line. A high school teacher assigns it as a discussion topic in a civics class. In Karoline, she begins receiving letters, some hateful, some apologetic. One handwritten says, "Thank you for showing us exactly what we still need to fight." The scene shifts to Ibrahim in his hotel suite, alone now. He opens his leather-bound journal. Inside, no words, just a sketch of an old woman's hands, his grandmother's. He thinks of the stories she told, of colonizers who demanded silence and obedience, of the way they'd nod politely while robbing the land, of her whisper, when the lion finally speaks, even the forest stops breathing. He smiles faintly, then closes the journal. That night, he dreams of fire, not destruction, but cleansing flames licking the edges of a gilded empire built on theft. And from the ashes, something quiet and new. The next morning, Ibrahim walks into Colombia, not through the front entrance, but through a back gate, shaking hands with janitors and security guards, the ones unseen, the ones who nod at him like kin. The hall is packed. A standing ovation greets him. Karoline watches from a live feed, her eyes narrowed. She can't look away. He begins his speech with a parable from Burkina Faso. It's about a bird that nested in the mouth of a lion and survived because it sang softly. The audience leans in. We've sung softly for centuries, Ibrahim says, but perhaps now, it is time to roar. As applause erupts, a new video emerges online. It's clearer now. The hot mic wasn't just someone calling him a savage. It was Karoline's producer saying, "Don't let him finish, he's too calm. Makes us look like fools." The internet erupts again. This time with fury. The network scrambles to issue statements. Karoline retreats from public view, citing stress. Anonymous sources report tension inside the media house. But that's only the surface. Underground and private forums and back channels, the narrative is shifting. A young black intern resigns from the show with a viral letter. A conservative sponsor pulls out quietly. More and more Americans, from all walks of life, start to ask, why did his words unsettle us so deeply? Cut to Ibrahim boarding a flight home. He looks out over the tarmac, not triumphant, just resolved. The journey ahead is long, and resistance will come, but something cracked that day. Not just a talk show script, but an illusion. That power could disguise itself forever as truth. Ibrahim closes his eyes as the plane lifts. Somewhere beneath the clouds, an empire begins to cough on its own dust. But we're not done yet, because something else is about to emerge from the shadows. An unseen player watching the clip for the 100th time. Someone powerful, someone nervous, someone who knew that mic was never supposed to be left on, and they're about to make a call that will change everything. If anything, it mutates, growing sharper, harder, impossible to silence. Morning shows splice and re-air, the moment Ibrahim sat still while Karoline uttered the slur. Think pieces bloom like fungus. Was it racism? Was it scripted? Was it justified? Was he too calm? Across timelines and platforms, a digital war simmers. Karoline's supporters dismiss it as theatrical, while Ibrahim's defenders, young, global, multilingual, share clips of her past. A thread goes viral, stitched together by a university student in Lagos. It connects years of Karoline's dismissive remarks about African leaders, language, and traditions. Audio overlays, text, her laughing while imitating an African official's accent, her mocking a tribal dance at a fundraiser, her calling African aid a waste on chaos. The clips are real. The context is devastating. By day 4, news outlets can't ignore it anymore. Karoline calls for civility, but her phrasing, "I won't apologize for being American," only inflames things further. Flashback. A grainy camcorder frame. A 14-year-old Ibrahim sits cross-legged on a red earth floor, reciting aloud from a book banned by the local colonial authorities. His voice is shaky, but it grows stronger as a teacher. Gray-haired, barefoot nods. Encouragement. That same teacher disappears the next morning. No reason given. No trace found. We return to the present. Ibrahim scrolls through his inbox. A flood of messages from around the world. Journalists, dignitaries, poets, students. Many simply say, "Thank you." Others say, "You reminded me who I am." But Ibrahim replies to none. He stares instead at an old photograph, his father standing beside a river, barefoot, trousers rolled, holding a rusted auk, -47, smiling. The caption in handwriting, "You do not need to shout when your silence echoes deeper." Cut back to Karoline, prepping in a private studio for a new segment. Her team is tense. A producer shows her a breaking story. A former intern has come forward anonymously, their silhouette bathed in shadow. "She would tell us to remove anything that made African leaders sound smart," the voice says. She said Americans wouldn't respect them if they sounded intellectual. A second voice, male, older, confirms. She edited footage to mock their clothing, their accents. She said it made the base feel superior. Karoline flinches, momentarily speechless. "Get me on a debate," she says. "I want to face him." Meanwhile, back in Burkina Faso, an old man in a worn robe watches the footage on a flickering TV inside a crowded village bar. He recognizes the phrase, "Your empire is already dust." It was part of a resistance poem from the colonial era banned in French schools. His father wrote that, the man says softly, eyes moist. The patrons fall quiet. In America, Ibrahim walks the streets unnoticed, a soft beanie pulled low, his coat zipped up. He buys tea, leaves heavy tips, and speaks rarely. He tells a journalist off record, she must speak again. I want her unmasked by her own mouth. When asked why he won't respond online, he replies, "History doesn't tweet." Cut to a sleek newsroom. The editorial board at a major network debates covering the story. A young intern insists, This isn't politics, it's cultural memory." Her voice shakes but holds. They approve a special segment. Next day, the story is aired, titled, "The Cost of Polite Empire." It trends instantly. That night, a new leak emerges. An unredacted memo from the State Department surfaces. It shows that several donors to Karoline's Media Foundation are linked to multinational corporations previously expelled from Burkina Faso for illegal cobalt extraction and alleged child labor. Buried in the memo, the names of 3 executives. Now indicted for bribing African officials, all 3 have appeared on Karoline's show, praised as global partners. A hush spreads through major studios. A rival anchor whispers during rehearsal, "She's not going to survive this." Meanwhile, Ibrahim receives a single message from an encrypted source. "She's going to try and trap you in the debate. Be precise, be patient." He reads it, nods slightly, and deletes it. His aide asks if he wants a rebuttal prepared. Ibrahim replies, "She will craft her own punishment." Backstage tension rises. Karoline reviews debate footage from Politico, figures she's visibly rehearsing lines designed to provoke. A makeup artist says softly, "You sure you want to do this?" Karoline, eyes steeled, replies, "I need to win. I always win." Her team rushes to sanitize her image, posting videos of her visiting Africa years ago, hugging children in a choreographed PR shoot. But online sleuths dig deeper, uncovering that the trip was paid for by the same conglomerate funding her donor circle. Comments flood in. Memes erupt. Her image as the youthful patriot begins to fracture. Meanwhile, journalists pore over Ibrahim's past. They find nothing scandalous. In fact, the deeper they dig, the more they unearth an uncomfortable truth. Ibrahim had warned the world. Years ago, archived speeches, letters, radio interviews, all hinting at Africa's systematic plundering and the West's complicity. One journalist remarks, "He didn't come to be heard. He came to show we weren't listening." A week before the debate, Karoline is invited to a fundraiser. Cameras catch her smiling alongside a man known for denying historical atrocities. In Africa, the photo spreads fast. That night, a whistleblower from the studio leaks audio from after the original broadcast. It's Karoline's mic, still hot, moments after the cameras cut. Her voice? "Did you see his face?" Dumb brute didn't even blink. A nervous laugh from the producer. Then, chilling silence. The clip spreads like wildfire. The backlash is immediate. Protests erupt, not violent, but poetic. Students stage silent sit-ins dressed in traditional African attire, mouths taped shut. Murals go up overnight. Ibrahim painted like a bronze statue, Karoline's silhouette crumbling beside him. Across continents, voices rise not in anger, but in solemn remembrance. In Burkina Faso, school children learn Ibrahim's now viral phrase as a new proverb. In New York, ticket sales for the live debate are gone in seconds. The world braces as the date approaches. Ibrahim prepares with calm precision. He reads quietly in a Brooklyn apartment, lent to him by a retired activist. His only visitor is a poet, an old friend who brings him a letter. It's from a boy in Nairobi who writes, "I was ashamed of my name until I saw you sit still." Ibrahim holds the letter, places it beside his father's old photo, and whispers, "Let her talk." The night before the debate, Karoline does a final rehearsal. Her advisors urge caution. Avoid anything race-related. One says, "Be it the bigger person." She scoffs. "If I can't win my way, I don't want to win at all." She steps away, rehearsing a line she thinks will crush him. Africa doesn't need warriors, it needs humility. The final frame, a vast auditorium, silent, 2 chairs, one empty. One soon to be filled. The nation know, the world waits. Not for confrontation, but for revelation. Not for outrage, but for the quiet implosion of everything built on polite deception. A massive venue glows under the lights of 100 cameras. The roar of the crowd simmers into an anticipatory hush as the moderator steps forward, welcoming the world to what has now been dubbed the most important televised debate in a decade. The camera pans slowly. Karoline Leavitt steps onto the stage like she's claiming ground. Dressed in an immaculately tailored ivory suit, each step echoes with entitlement carefully disguised as command. A sharp smile dances across her lips. Every movement says, "I own this space." But then, Ibrahim enters. There's no music, no spotlight flare. Just calm, a soft, traditional Sahelian tunic, hand-woven light against his skin. The way he walks in hurried silences, even the claps, it's not grandeur, it's gravity. And the contrast is undeniable. The room notices some squirm. The moderator's introduction blurs into background hum, because already, a current has shifted. The debate begins. Karoline strikes fast. With the cold poise of someone rehearsed in battle, she floods the floor with numbers, accusations, and pointed anecdotes meant to undercut Ibrahim's credibility. She brandishes graphs showing US aid to Africa, clips of him speaking critically of Western policies, and statistics framed to suggest incompetence among African governments. "You criticize from afar. she says. But where would your nation be without American partnerships? The crowd reacts, flashes pop, but Ibrahim does not bite. He doesn't raise his voice. Instead, his gaze softens. And in a voice textured with quiet sorrow, he begins to tell a story not from a textbook, but from lived history. He speaks of cobalt mines where children breathe in death before they reach puberty. He speaks of coups carried out by soldiers trained in the U.S. against democratically elected African leaders. His facts come without venom, his critique lands without spectacle, and that is what makes it devastating. Karoline flinches. The moderator interjects, trying to steer things back to familiar talking points. But the crowd is listening differently now. Each time Karoline retorts, her tone sharpens. Her sentences grow longer, more desperate. She tries to frame him as she references our values, our moral authority. Then she makes a mistake. Her voice lifts, unrestrained. You're not even American. How dare you lecture us on what we built? The moment freezes. The room doesn't gasp, it stops. Karoline's face twitches in that half second of regret that comes too late. Ibrahim waits. Then, slowly, like a man not reacting, but revealing, he replies, "Where I'm from, we don't teach children to kneel before flags. We teach them to stand for truth, even when it burns their feet." There's no applause. Just that kind of silence that makes people aware of their own breathing. The moderator clears his throat. But the program has shifted. No script remains. Suddenly, a new figure steps into view. The moderator, startled, is handed a clearance note. The producers whisper into his earpiece. He nods hesitantly. "Joining us," he says, "is a former UN delegate from Nigeria, Mr. Adami Adesina." Karoline's pupils narrow. The audience recognizes the name Adesina, once laughed off a panel by Karoline herself during a climate summit when she mocked his pronunciation of infrastructure. He walks in without resentment. His voice is firm. "You laughed when I spoke English, but now your nation listens to a man with my accent." The audience erupts not in chaos, but in something, heavier recognition. A mirror has been lifted. Karoline begins to rattle her notes. Her posture shifts from attack to containment. "This is character assassination," she stammers. But Ibrahim leans forward, not gloating, but resolved. "This is not personal vengeance. This is history correcting its posture." Backstage, her team frantically types on tablets. On screen, her smile has fractured. The moderator tries to pivot to audience questions. But before a single card can be read, a journalist in the front row stands. "May I?" she says. The moderator, cornered by the moment, nods. The journalist speaks carefully. "Today, an internal email was verified by 3 outlets. It is attributed to Ms. Leavitt." The subject line reads, "Africa famines make good fundraising optics." A murmur ripples. The journalist continues. Attached is a photo of malnourished children. Captioned, "Get better lighting next time." Gasps pierce the room. Karoline, caught between disbelief and denial, tries to speak, but no words come. The journalist's voice trembles slightly, but remains firm. "We reached out to your office for comment. You called the email taken out of context. Would you like to explain the context now?" Karoline blinks. The moderator does not rescue her. Ibrahim does not gloat. The screen flickers. The room watches her inhale, then exhale. Then, without a word, she gathers her notes, stands, and walks off stage. The live feed continues, but no one speaks. Narration returns, hushed, precise. She came to control the narrative, but he came with the truth, and truth does not kneel. The crowd doesn't cheer. They don't clap. They sit, processing. In the coming hours, the footage spreads like fire. Every frame is dissected. Karoline's retreat is played in slow motion. Ibrahim's words are etched into captions, then murals, then classroom posters. The debate isn't over, they say. It's only now beginning. And somewhere, far from the cameras, Ibrahim sits quietly, watching not the coverage, but the horizon. Because for him, the point was never to win a debate. It was to show that a man's silence can be louder than 1,000 podiums. And that dignity, when unshaken, can undo empires of pretense. Bleed into each other like blurred headlines. The world has moved on, but not in Karoline's favor. Networks that once chased her for commentary now quietly scrub her segments from their archives. Her podcast once topping charts drops off without notice. A series of corporate rejections stack silently in her inbox. Her name becomes a whisper in boardrooms that once invited her to speak. The camera that once flattered her now seems to betray her. Each time she looks in the mirror, she sees the clip replaying the moment she said, "You're not even American." It's been memmed, dissected, and replayed in classrooms. No spin saved it. She scrolls through her social media. The comments are eerily quiet, not even hateful, just indifferent. No defenders left. A trending hashtag, once sarcastic, has taken a new meaning. Hashtag let truth speak. She retreats into her Manhattan apartment. Modern cage of glass and concrete. Days pass in bathrobes and unopened blinds. She watches old interviews of herself, pausing frequently. She listens to the cadence of her voice, sharp, confident, self-assured, and realizes how unfamiliar it sounds now. On her phone, a voicemail plays again. Her former assistant Laurel, who had quit just weeks before the debate. The message is simple. I used to think you were fearless, but maybe it was just noise. Maybe it's time to apologize. Not for your career, for your soul. Karoline doesn't delete it. She doesn't reply either, but she replays it more times than she admits. Half a world away, a dustier silence settles. In Ouagadougou, Ibrahim Traoré walks alone near the outskirts of the city. The land is sun-scorched and humming with life. He carries a single printed photo himself at the debate, facing Karoline Leavitt. It's folded, slightly torn. At the edges, at a modest grave marked with a handmade stone, he kneels. His father's name, written in faded paint, still visible. He places the photo beneath a baobab tree nearby. The wind catches it slightly, but the earth holds it down. He doesn't speak aloud, but his silence feels like a conversation. In the background, children laugh from a distant schoolyard. They're learning in a new building, one funded entirely by anonymous donors. No speeches, no inaugurations, but those who know. The school bears the name of Aminata Al-Drago, the activist Karoline once publicly insulted and dismissed as too emotional to be credible. Now her name stands above a library filled with African literature and history, written by African hands. Back in the U.S., the national dialogue shifts subtly. A young black journalist, Dawn Reynolds, sits under the studio lights of a major network. She delivers her closing commentary with poise. For too long, dignity was mistaken for weakness. Silence was seen as submission. But what we witnessed last month wasn't just a debate, it was a reckoning. A man came not to perform, but to remind. A mirror was held up not just to a woman, but to a culture that applauds cruelty and calls it strength. That mirror cannot be unbroken. The studio is silent after she finishes. Even the anchors around her seem unsure of how to proceed. Her words ripple beyond the broadcast. In classrooms, in panel discussions, in coffee shops, people quote her. Parents play it back for their children. University lectures analyze the full debate not as politics, but as moral anthropology. Karoline, meanwhile, moves quietly through the city. She no longer wears the sharp suits. No more high heels. Her presence is unnoticed now, which is a first in decades. One afternoon, she steps into a small independent bookstore on the Lower East Side. The shop is calm, soft jazz, playing, faintly, dust catching the late afternoon light. Her eyes scan instinctively. Her book used to sit in the front. It's gone. She walks down the back aisle, almost leaving. When she stops, a shelf labeled Global Voices. A book stands out, rough textured cover. The title in delicate dust and silence. Below it, the author's name, Ibrahim Traoré. Her fingers hover near it, but don't touch. She reads the back summary. It's not about the debate. It's about his mother, about exile, about language lost and reclaimed. She reads a line aloud under her breath. We were not meant to conquer the world, only to understand it before it disappears. She leaves without buying it. But the image of the cover follows her. Later that week, a documentary airs on streaming platforms. It's titled The Boy She Told to Sit. It traces not just the debate but her career arc, her rise through aggressive sound bites, her pattern of silencing marginalized voices, and how it all unraveled, not with a scandal, but a sentence. Clips of Ibrahim play, interspersed with interviews from African students, professors, miners, and former colonized voices. It trends in over 25 countries. Back in Ouagadougou, Ibrahim doesn't watch it. He spends his days helping develop water, infrastructure projects and organizing book drives. He walks without guards, without announcement. In an interview he reluctantly accepts with a regional paper, the journalist asks, "Do you think you won?" He laughs softly and says, "This was never a war. I just told the truth long enough for someone to listen." The final sequence unfolds like poetry. A schoolgirl reads aloud under a mango tree, quoting his memoir. In New York, a mural is painted, of him, not his face, but his words. Truth does not kneel. On a plane somewhere over the Atlantic, a businesswoman reads dust and silence, and wipes away a tear. She doesn't know why. Somewhere, Karoline watches an old video of herself again. This time, she lets it play until the end. Then, Ibrahim's voice is heard, his final monologue, and echoing, layered over quiet footage of children playing in a dusty courtyard. He says, "I did not come to shout. I came to remember. And in remembering, I made the world listen." The screen fades. Too black. No music, no applause. Just the weight of silence. The kind that makes people think.